Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're going to be talking about 5 tips I have to make your reptile routine faster. There's a lot of little things you could get bogged down in when doing your routine, especially if you have a lot of reptiles. So let's focus on the key things that you enjoy about reptiles and not all the little pesky things that are annoying, like using a little squirt bottle to spray down a huge enclosure or something like that. So let's get to it, and here's my 5. Number 5 is an obvious one. Automatic timers allow for a lot more freedom. It actually allows you to go away for a couple days if you wanted to, whereas if you had to be the one turning on and off the lights for your reptiles, you're going to have to be present pretty much daily, and it's going to be even worse if you have them on different time sets. So you would be turning different ones off and different ones on at different times. It could just get to be a little bit of a hassle. It doesn't take too much time in the action itself, I guess, but just having to pay attention and make sure you do that throughout the day and schedule your day around that, that could be pretty troublesome, I guess. So don't worry about doing that. Just get an automatic timer. There's so many of these smart plugs out there that work and would be efficient, and you can control them from across the United States, even across the world. So it really saves a lot of time, a lot of hassle. Automating things in general tend to be a good way to save some time on the little things in a hobby or the little things in life. So I definitely recommend them. I use Wemo. I think that's how you pronounce it. I've never figured it out. W-E-M-O. It's a smart plug. I'm sure you've seen it already over top of the video, but that's what I use. It works pretty good, and it's really not that expensive. I believe there are also other smart plugs and such that can connect to a Google Home or an Alexa, which a lot of people have nowadays, and you can control them via voice, which is a cool little feature if you're into that. You know, I like to think I'm a pretty cool guy, pretty good guy, so I'm going to give you guys a tip inside of a tip here. Keep up to date on those firmware updates on whatever app you use to connect to that smart plug, because if you don't, it will act a little unnatural and it can turn off without you knowing. It could be just very finicky and cause a lot of problems, and your lights might not even turn on at all. So yes, automating your lights in your reptile enclosures would be a great way to free up your schedule and save some time. You can name them whatever you want, and you can put them all together on one app instead of having to deal with each individually. It's just a very cool and neat thing that's not too expensive and definitely worth it. You know what else is not too expensive and definitely worth it? Subscribing to this channel, so make sure you turn down to the lower right hand corner. I don't know why I said turn, but make sure you do it anyway. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell as well for the latest updates. Birds haven't interrupted us yet today, guys. Maybe we can make it. Number 4 could be a big time saver for those with high humidity requirement reptiles, or really just any humidity requirement reptiles that's above room humidity. I was about to say room temp. But if you get a misting system, you could really just automate that. And like I said, automating is really a great way to save time on anything in general. So getting a Mist King, which I know is kind of expensive, and that's kind of the downside to this, but if you want a quality one, or you want to get one, I'd get a quality one is basically what I want to say. I got a Mist King for my adult Boyd's Forest Dragon setup that I'm working on, and that's going to automate that process. It looks really cool. I'm really into it, and yes, like I said, it did cost a little bit of a pretty penny. I think it was a little over $150, but I think it's going to pay off in terms of saving time and really making sure that humidity is where I want it to be. And the cool thing is with these systems like Mist King is you can expand the nozzles and different lines that you run to more enclosures. It could get a little messy. That's again another downside of that, but it's not like you have to buy a whole nother Mist King system for $150 or whatever. You can expand it and make it larger and longer without having to buy a whole new system. So there is a little bit of a plus once you buy it. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but Alex Agamids, who does a lot of Agamid stuff, uses Mist King quite a lot and recommends it very much. I believe I actually got a Mist King per his recommendation. I'm gonna have to feel really stupid if it wasn't him and he's in the comments right now like, no, I didn't recommend you this, John. But he does a lot of high tropical species stuff, Chinese water dragon stuff, so I think, you know, especially with how meticulous he is with his reptiles, I definitely trust that it's worth getting. Also, if you see the camera suddenly shake, I'm sorry, I just keep smacking my knee on it and not trying to bite my tongue when doing so I apologize. So yes, you have a large amount of tropical species, and you don't want to go across spraying down every enclosure every day, probably multiple times a day. Get a Mist King system. Connect it to a Herp stat. It will save you a lot of time. It's worth it. I'm doing it just for one of my guys, so I recommend it. Number 3 is another big one. I am a very last minute type of person. I rarely meal prep, but that's a great reason why I got into Reptile links, because they're already prepared. But anyway, if you can, meal prep weekly. Meal prep as far out as you possibly can without letting the food go bad. Freeze it, and then use it to thaw it, obviously. Don't use it frozen. Stupid ant, get off the lens. A lot of Tegu owners do this with their Tegus. They will do their little mash and mix together that they do, and they'll do it, I think, a week ahead of time. They'll do it for the week every, like, Sunday or something, and then they'll freeze it and thaw it out when it's time to feed to them, and it works great. It's a lot easier than going... Was that necessary? It's a lot easier than breaking out the squash, breaking out the meat. Just every time you're gonna feed your Tegu or your reptile, you can have it already done and not have to go through the mess, the cleanup. It really adds up. It might not seem much and overall, I guess, but it really does add up, and that's kind of why meal prep is used. It's because it saves time and you can just kind of knock it out in one session. So I could definitely recommend meal prepping. It's definitely an efficient use of time. Just do it on one day. Get it done for as far in the future you could kind of organize that for. It's gonna save you time. Anyway, guys, let's move on to number 2 on our list. Go BIOACTIVE. It's a great way to not have to constantly be cleaning out your enclosure. It's self-sustaining, so those poops that are laid, leave that up to the isopods. You don't have to clean out the substrate 2 times a year. I don't know how often people do it, because I have BIOACTIVE myself, at least semi-BIOACTIVE. I don't have plants in mine. I personally can never imagine cleaning out my substrate even 2 times a year for my Ackie enclosures. I did that once when I was moving to my current location from my previous location. It took 6 hours. It was terrible. I had a garbage bag that broke in the middle of an apartment hallway. It was a mess. I was not a fan of that. And obviously, if you go BIOACTIVE, try to do it as good as possible, as right as possible. I would love that in plants of mine. It's really not the end of the world that I don't. And I do plan on trying it at some point. I just have some reptiles that really like to rip a lot of things up. But you want to do it as proper as you can, because if you do it wrong, that could lead to things like mushrooms growing, which will probably happen at some point. I have had it many times, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And they grow really because I don't have any plants sucking up those nutrients, so that's kind of just sitting there. And when you get organic soil that's just really digged up dirt from the ground somewhere, it's probably going to have some fungi, some unnecessary things in there, if you get what I mean. So yeah, it's going to happen. You're going to have things like that happen. It's really not the end of the world as long as you don't let it get out of hand. But doing it as proper as possible will minimize those, if that makes sense. Overall, unless you really are the type of person that wants to really monitor the poops, like every time they lay, make sure you see it and you're the one cleaning it up, I think BIOACTIVE is a great way to go. I always see when my Ackies poop. I always see when my Tegus poop. Obviously, they're enormous, so I don't really have a problem seeing their poops and checking on that and making sure it's normal. But if you're a little bit more meticulous, then maybe that's not the way to go. But I think overall, it will definitely save you some time. Furthermore, there's no reason to really not go BIOACTIVE. I know there's this whole impaction debate out there and such. If you get proper husbandry, impaction should not be an issue. And it's not expensive to go BIOACTIVE. I mean, isopods can cost a little bit, but you could also breed your own isopods and it really not be too hard. I know dairy cows, those are very easy to breed. Dwarf whites, which are very popular inside my Ackie enclosures, are, I don't know, I never tried to breed them, but I don't think they're as good as dairy cow breeding, so I'm not sure, but they do take off in my Ackie enclosures. I mean, I started out with very few of them, and now there's a lot of them, so they can expand. So that's a way you could save some time. There I go again, banging my knee. Wrapping up number 2, I think going BIOACTIVE is a very good thing to do in terms of time saving. Like I said, you might have reasons to not go and do BIOACTIVE, which is fine. I'm not saying you have to do BIOACTIVE, but I think no matter what, it's going to save you time overall. It's not too expensive, and it's very easy to set up. Just do a little bit of research on the animal that you want to do BIOACTIVE for and see what other people are doing. Make sure you do it right to minimize any risks in terms of doing extra cleaning that you might have to do. But overall, I think there's a lot in going BIOACTIVE, especially in regards to the time. Finally, number 1, let's get to it, guys. Proper setup and care. I know, I've been talking a lot about this in various videos lately, I feel like, but it's important for time savings. I mean, the biggest gripe I have with this is people think cutting corners in care and cutting corners in design and setup of their reptile, they think that's going to save money and save time overall, where it's really going to make things more expensive and more time consuming. If you don't give them a proper setup, you don't give them proper care, it's going to ultimately lead to them having problems, which in turn is going to end up with you sitting at the vet for 4 hours figuring out what's going on. Additionally, if you cut corners in your enclosure and do something wrong, something might break, and then you have to spend time fixing that and addressing that, and that might lead to even more stress because you might have to order something and wait for it to come in, and it could be something very important to the life of the reptile. It just could get very stressful and time consuming cutting corners. I hope this makes sense to you guys, and I hope I'm not overdoing it on this topic, but I think the best way to avoid time-consuming factors of the reptile hobby, and especially stress-consuming factors of the hobby, which is not what you want to focus on in regards to a passion, you don't want to give improper setups and think that it's better for your time and better for your money, your wallet, doing so. So overall, and I'll keep this one short because I've been saying it a lot, and I keep saying I've been saying it a lot, but give your reptiles proper care and a proper setup. That'll save you time and money. It will make sure that you enjoy your reptile and you don't have to deal with the stress of reptiles that can come through with that. Okay guys, so that's about it. Let me know your time-saving tricks. I want to know. Leave them in the comments below. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe as well, and we'll wrap this up with a couple announcements. Shout out to you lovely patrons out there, Darian J, Mahan's Bioactive Reptiles, Kat and Rick, Brian B, Herp M, Angela L, David T, and Smooth Cat. I really appreciate your support. You guys too can support the channel for as little as $1 a month. Check the top right for more information. Hey guys, if you didn't know by now, we have merch. It's not like I say it at the end of every video, but I'm wearing my tongue out Tuesday right now. It is not Tuesday, but who cares? I'm a rebel. Check the top right, left of my head, right of your screen for all my designs. I have 3 more than this. Check the Teespring link in the description if you're into them. That'll bring you to the page where there's a bunch of different items, and I ruined this. It'll bring you to the merch page where we have these designs of multiple things like t-shirts and coffee mugs and such, so go check it out. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.